Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by United States Senator Tom Cotton. Good morning, Senator.
Hey, Hugh. It's great to be back on with you after a couple weeks hiatus. You know, in August, when I'm traveling around the state, schedule doesn't always work out so well. But I want to commend you for being like the American version of BBC covering the House of Commons, for whom I have great respect for their political rhetoric and especially the invective.
Yes.
I have to say my one guilty pleasure that I have listening to you over the last few weeks is all of the back and forth between Boris Johnson and Jerry Corbyn and John Burkow, who for some reason keeps speaking even though he's not supposed to.
I couldn't give a flying flamingo what your view is.
I now have a whole list of things to play for you and Gallagher and all the other youngsters that come on this show. I'm ready for you sit down, young man. I've got all that stuff. Before we turn to the Taliban deal, what do you think is the importance of Brexit for an American audience? I'm paying a lot of attention to it for a reason. What do you think that reason is?
Yeah, so Hugh, whatever you think of Brexit, and I generally try not to opine on the domestic political questions of our allies, especially allies close to Great Britain. Simple fact is the people voted for it. More people voted for Brexit in 2016 than have ever voted for anything or anyone in British politics. In the long history of the British people, more people voted to leave the European Union in 2016 than have ever voted for any position, any party, or any politician. And for 3 years, the political and business and media and academic and cultural elites in Great Britain have been doing everything they can to thwart that popular decision. Not unlike, your listeners might note, the same reaction of all those elites to the election of Donald Trump in 2016. Look, I understand that some people oppose Brexit, and they campaigned strongly against it, and they spent millions of dollars in what the opponents of Brexit even called Project Fear, yet the people voted for it. It is time to get on with it. It's time to respect that democratic decision and for the political class in London to deliver on the people's vote from 2016.
Now, yesterday, Britt Hume called my attention to the Christopher Caldwell essay in the Claremont Review of Books, which truly is quite an exemplary essay. Have you had a chance to read it yet, Senator Cotton?
I have read it, so I would commend the Claremont Review of Books to your listeners at all times, especially their excellent review by Victor Davis Hanson of Sacred Duty. But in particular, I would commend Christopher Caldwell's essay on Brexit and the kind of uneasy relationship of Great Britain to the continent and the EU over their entire association, and also how the elites in London have really used every single tool at their disposal to try to stop Brexit, to try to undermine the people's vote. You now have a government that's in charge in Parliament that has said they are going to deliver on the people's vote. It's unfortunate that wasn't available, or that government wasn't present immediately after the Brexit vote. But I would strongly commend Christopher Caldwell's essay for any American listener who wants to understand what's been going on in British politics over the last 3 years.
Now, you're in an interesting position of being among the most influential senators when it comes to President Trump, and probably the closest friend that Mike Pompeo has in a town that's better known for dogs than friends. What is your advice to them to the extent that you can say about the ongoing possibility of a conversation with the Taliban, whether in the United States or abroad, about peace in Afghanistan?
Well, Hugh, we've been having negotiations with the Taliban for some time. Zalmay Khalilzad, our former ambassador to Afghanistan and the United Nations, is the president's special envoy for those peace negotiations in Afghanistan. He's been having those conversations in Qatar. My understanding is what happened last week is that the Taliban had reached an agreement in principle with Zalmay in Qatar, but then they immediately began to backtrack and renege on their commitments, not surprising. As Mike Pompeo said on the Sunday morning shows, we don't trust the Taliban, but verify their commitments. And when we couldn't verify they were upholding their commitments, the president said not only was he not going to meet with their leaders, but he was going to end the talks altogether. Look, ultimately, we'll have to have negotiations if we want a negotiated political solution in Afghanistan. But in the meantime, we can't take the pressure off the Taliban. And as Secretary Pompeo outlined on the Sunday morning shows, although the Taliban has continued to blow up car bombs across Afghanistan, we've killed over 1,000 Taliban fighters in recent weeks in Afghanistan. That's the way you get a successful political negotiation, is to continue to apply pressure on the battlefield.
You know, Senator Cotton, very quickly, I'm talking to General Mattis at the Nixon Library on Friday night. His new memoir is a classic. What level of troops do you think we need to maintain in Afghanistan long term, like we do in South Korea, in order to make that country a forward operating base in the region and to assure stability for the Afghan government?
Hugh, that's a shifting and indeterminate question. It depends in part on conditions on the ground, as the Secretary and the President have said. The challenge that Afghanistan poses from a counterterrorism standpoint is its geography. It's far removed from any friendly country where we could base forces, or from the seas where we could have forces on our naval ships, unlike, say, Yemen or Somalia or Syria. I think we can bring our troops levels down significantly from where they are now, but we have to remember the highest concentration of foreign terrorist fighters anywhere in the world is in Afghanistan still.
Senator Tom Cotton, always a pleasure.